Who's in and who is out? We tell you what went down in the third round of Africa Zone qualifiers as teams set their sights on the 2018 World Cup in Russia. Hello and a very warm welcome to Matchpoint, CCTV's new program that brings you all things African sports. I'm Maher Mutua. Here's what's also coming up this half hour.
We are trying to stabilize ourselves as a competitive country.
The Olympics criteria debate rages on in South Africa. And meet the Rwandese female cyclist Jeanne D'Arc riding her way to the top. So let's begin with a summary of the international action last week that saw African teams across the continent go in search of qualification to the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia. Now, the big names across the continent sealed progression to the third round of action. Wins for Cameroon, Uganda, Zambia, Ghana, Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire with clean sheets over both legs saw them qualify easily. Now, North African sides also registered positive results as Egypt beat Chad 4-1 on aggregate, while Tunisia were forced to dig deep and progressed 4-2 on aggregate against Mauritania. Algeria gained the best advantage, winning 9-2 against Tanzania over two legs. One of the surprise stories, however, was the immediate resignation of Congo-Brazzaville coach Claude Leroy, who stepped down despite seeing his team through 6-4 on aggregate against Ethiopia.
We're happy. We've progressed to the next round and hopefully we'll start working to prepare for group stage in a good way so that we reach the World Cup for a third consecutive time.
Right now, let's get further insight into the week that was in World Cup qualification across Africa. Joining us now in Egypt is Marwan Ahmed Said, the manager of Egyptian sports website kingfoot.com. Now, Marwan, there are 5 tickets for Africa to Russia 2018. Are there any surprises for you in the last 20 teams that progressed from the third round of action?
Actually, there wasn't so many surprises to me in the teams qualified as much as in the first legs of the qualifiers. Ghana, Senegal, Nigeria and Algeria all got draws in their first matches but managed to avoid scares in the second matches and qualify. The biggest surprise for me was Egypt's loss in Chad. They lost 1-0 in Chad, but then in the second match they managed to go through after winning 4-0. The thing that surprised me the most, more than results, are the events that occurred in Chad and Kenya and Tanzania. They were far from usual. Some teams arrived late, but in the end it wasn't meant to be for them to pass through the second round.
Now, Marwan, touching on that, some of the teams, like you said, Chad and Kenya, were caught up in tussles with their federations in over the two legs. Now, especially following first leg wins for some of these sides, do you think that what happened with their football administrations cost them a place in the final round?
Of course, I can't do anything but put blame on them. I've never seen a team in my life that didn't even show up for the warming up session before the match. Chad arrived around 1.5 hours before the match against Egypt. They were supposed to arrive around less than 24 hours, but just 1.5 hours before the match. It's very weird. I've never seen something like this happen in my life. Even though Chad were up 1-0, they could have qualified, but their football federation should be held responsible for what happened. Regarding Kenya, it's also very weird. They were at the airport at 6 a.m., but the flight took off at around 10 p.m. at night. Players were paid their money in cash in the airport. I've never seen or heard of something like this. Even team captain Victor Wanyama, he was called by Southampton, and they told him if he finds it dangerous or it's not ideal to travel, he shouldn't. I've never seen something in my life or heard something that happens like this in a World Cup qualifier. Even though Kenya were up 1-0 in their first match, they could have went through, but then the circumstances of their second trip made them lose at Cape Verde. I've never seen players getting paid money in cash and sleeping around in the airport just before an African qualifier of this strength. There was a petition from the Kenyan Footballers Welfare Association to hold peaceful it was a peaceful petition. I don't think I've seen something like this happen. It's not ideal. The FAs should be, the Football Association should be held responsible for what happened.
All right, Marwan, thank you very much for those insights. That was Marwan Ahmed Said, manager of Egyptian sports website kingfoot.com, talking to us about some of the football administration problems that plagued some of the teams after the round 3 of action last week. Now, moving on, in January 2016, Rwanda will compete at the African Nations Championships, or CHAN, for the second time. The team qualified as hosts and will face Cote d'Ivoire in their opening qualifier. Amavubi will use the 2015 East and Central Africa competition, CECAFA, to prepare for CHAN. In an interview with CCTV, Rwanda's 30-year-old coach Johnny McKinstry said he was confident CECAFA could help boost the team's confidence ahead of CHAN following a string of 6 losses. McKinstry, however, began by expressing his disappointment at the 4-1 aggregate loss to Libya, which saw them knocked out of the 2018 World Cup qualifiers.
For us to not progress into the next round was very disappointing. What was probably more disappointing was just the fashion that it happened in. You know, we've played 4 competitive games now since I came in, and the first 2 we had such great performances in. We obviously won away in Mozambique, and then we were very unfortunate not to take points off Ghana in a home game where we really were up against it. And so to see the level of the performance come down in these games was disappointing. Everyone comes to the stadium, they think you should be Brazil. But you don't become Brazil overnight, so it takes time. But you know, we understand the environment we work in. We understand that if we don't get a result, there's going to be criticism.
There's a lot of expectation with Rwanda hosting CHAN. Do you think the country can win CHAN?
We've got to go about our job, make sure we know as much about our opponents as possible. But I do think we've been put in the most difficult group. But the aim's, let's get out of the group, let's get on a run, get the supporters excited, and see how far we can go. We'll be using CECAFA very much as the preparation for CHAN. So for a number of these players, they've never played in a fixed time frame tournament of like 2 or 3 weeks. So it's excellent for them because we wouldn't want to go into CHAN with them never having had that experience.
In your opinion, does the strength of a domestic league translate to how a national team in CHAN can perform, seeing as this is a competition for domestic-based players?
The most competitive teams over the years in the CHAN competition have been ones who've had strong domestic leagues, so it can be used as a reference point. Also, the players that are in your league have a big influence on how you do. If you look in the Rwandan league, I would say at least 60% of the strikers in the Rwandan league are from Uganda, Congo or Burundi. So we've got a very limited supply of strikers in the league, and that's a challenge. And obviously Rwanda took a very brave decision last year to say they were going to move on a lot of players who, maybe previous administrations had been a bit naughty in saying, well, okay, you're from Congo, but you're playing in the Rwandan league, so here's a Rwandan passport. But if you look at the players, I think there were 6 players involved with the national team at the time who were told, we're going to have to move you to the side and not play you. 5 of them were strikers. And so that's made the job difficult. With
a team that averages around 23 years of age, as a young coach, do you feel like it's easier for you to relate to them?
Our working relationship is very good with the players. Yes, I'm young in numerical age, but at the same time, I've been coaching since I was 16, 17. So I've been doing this for 13 or 14 years. When I started with Sierra Leone, my first training session with Sierra Leone, I came up from coaching very talented academy level players, some of whom, especially from the Ghanaian academy, had went on and played in African Cup of Nations and World Cups for Ghana. But now I was stood in front of a group of Sierra Leone players who, one was at AC Milan, another one was at Norwich City in the Premier League, we had one at Celtic in the Scottish Premier League, we had millionaires. At the time I was 27, and I stepped onto that training pitch, and I'm sure they sort of thought, well, what's going on here? It's never ever been an issue because the quality on the training pitch is high, and once that's high, the players they fall into line and they're like, yeah, let's get to work.
While you were in Sierra Leone, there was talk that you working in Africa is just a CV builder for you. What do you have to say about this?
Nobody's interested on just a list of things on your CV. If I want to go and work in the Premier League or the Bundesliga or somewhere like that in the future, I have to have been successful in the previous things. So, okay, you might say to people, they're coming to Africa to build their CV, but if they want to go on to the next step, as you say, you've got to be successful. You've got to go and win football matches. And that's win-win for everybody. And so, you know, here, if what I do in Rwanda leads to something else in the future, all, you know, well be it. But we've got to be successful here first. And that's what the next, you know, 3 or 4 years hopefully are about.
Right, well, it's time for us to take a short break. You're watching Match Point here on CCTV Africa. There's plenty more still to come, including...
We are trying to stabilize ourselves as a competitive country.
The Olympics criteria debate rages on in South Africa. Welcome back. Now, the row over the Olympic qualification criteria rages on in South Africa, with many federations up in arms because of the decision by the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee to strictly adhere to the qualification criteria set out in May this year and not backtrack on their agreements with the respective sports federations. That means that if teams did not meet the criteria, they would not go, even if they tried to qualify through the continental route, as the South African women's sevens team have now discovered, as CS Du Plessis now reports.
The South African women's rugby sevens team have been told that despite winning the Rugby Africa Olympic qualifier, they have not met the criteria for the 2016 Olympic Games that was set by the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee and signed off by the South African Rugby Union. There have been rumblings about the decision from the rugby fraternity that they will challenge the decision, but this is yet to be confirmed. The criteria for rugby and football is very different, according to SASCOC President Gideon Sam, due to FIFA's guidelines.
In football, FIFA says, no, only the tournament in Africa. And we then say to football, but how does it work? Because it's been a dicey one for us too, you know. So, no, are you crooking us? So we had to sit down with the CEO, Mr. Dennis Mumble, and say, Dennis, can you explain? He says, President, I'm not lying to you. There is no other route for them. And on that score, you know, we have to bend backwards a little bit for Banyana.
Sam says for the women's rugby sevens team, the criteria was outlined and accepted by SARU, but due to their disappointing efforts in the World 7 Series, they have let themselves down by slipping to 13th on the world rankings.
Is a team that's ranked so low, is it going to make any impact? I know it's going to be a big debate. You know, it's going. I'm not staring myself blindly into that huge debate that is coming, because people are going to say, but you took Banyana.
The SASCOC president is hoping that South African sports fans and media will get behind their decision, that it is all about quality over quantity and selecting the best medal contenders possible to represent the country in Brazil next year.
I'm appealing to South Africans. Let's go for quality now. You know, a plane of 280 athletes is a costly exercise. And if many of them are not even going to do the first round, you are going to have people up in arms here. People are going to ask, why are we wasting so much money when we don't have housing and we don't have clinics? And, you know, and I hope they will keep quiet. I know that people are going to appeal to them, but they must just keep quiet and say, we are trying to stabilize ourselves as a competitive country and move on.
The outlook for the South African women's sevens team is rather gloomy. SASCOC are sticking to their guns, saying the criteria for Olympic qualification haven't been met, meaning that Kenya will more than likely find themselves at the Olympic Games next year. The sports minister Fikile Mbalula has waded in, saying they need to find a solution, but he's since done a U-turn, saying that the criteria haven't been met, therefore the South African women's sevens team won't be travelling to Rio de Janeiro. CS Du Plessis, CCTV, Johannesburg.
Well, now for more on that story, of course, between South Africa's Rugby Sevens team and Kenya's team on who will be going to Rio 2016, we're joined live in studio here in Kenya by the Kenya Rugby Union CEO, Ronald Bukusi. Ronald, I'll begin by asking you about Kenya's women's team. Obviously, as you heard there, they're dependent on whether South Africa pull out or not. Do you think the team is ready to go to Rio in case the decision goes Kenya's way?
Yeah, I would say so. We've been preparing for this for a really long time, and even when we went down to Johannesburg in September for the qualifiers, our goal was to qualify for the tournament, for the Olympics. And we got to the final and lost to South Africa. However, due to the fact that we were second, there's a repechage that is played next year, sometime in June, I believe. And so we simply continued, after a little break, we continued our preparations with the team to play in the repechage next year. Now, if by fate decides that South Africa decides they're pulling out, then we simply extend our planning to include the Olympics later on in the year. Right now, we're looking towards the repechage and we're planning towards that.
Now, Ronald, talking about the men's rugby team, they of course qualified to the Olympic Games next year after they beat Zimbabwe last week. What has been the reaction from the union and from players on making it to Rio next year?
It's unbelievable. It's a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity, considering the rugby was last played in the Olympics in 1924 as a 15-a-side game, and now it's a 7-a-side tournament set up in Rio next year. There are only going to be 12 countries in the world that will be participating in that, and it's a huge honor for everyone and a great privilege. We also acknowledge there's a lot of work to be done between now and then to prepare ourselves for that. But we intend to play the game, not just the occasion. There's a lot of excitement about it, and we're very proud of our team.
Finally, Ronald, admittedly, it has been a tumultuous ride for the Sevens team in this qualification round. Looking at the new season for the IRB World Series that gets underway in Dubai next week, how have the team's preparations been going, and can we say that the union and players are finally working well together?
Yes, we have. As you say, there have been issues that we have been addressing and are still addressing with a view to making our lives so much better and so much easier. We're moving more into a professional setup, so we have to develop the structures that are going to handle all those things. The team is preparing. We got to have two strategies in mind. There's a short-term strategy in terms of how do we take care of the World Series that comes up, which is going to be a lot more grueling than it's been in the past, seeing as there are 2 more tournaments that are added to it. So as opposed to the 8 tournaments, they're going to be 10. And then after that, you go in towards the Olympics. So the strategy has to be able to address every single leg that comes up, starting with Dubai next week or the week after that. And at the same time, have a long-term plan to get ourselves ready to compete and participate in the Olympics effectively.
Ronald Bukusi, thank you very much for speaking to us there. Indeed, it will be a waiting game for both Kenya Rugby Sevens teams. The men's team has qualified to Rio 2016, and the women's will be waiting for South Africa's decision. That was the CEO of the Kenya Rugby Union, Ronald Bukusi, joining us live here in Nairobi. Well, it's time for us to take another short break. Still to come. Meet Rwanda's female cyclist Jeanne D'Arc, who's riding her way to the top.
He's a speedster and he's very solid indeed.
It's David Rudisha, 1:40.91 is shown on the clock.
All right, turning to matters cycling now. In the Tour in Rwanda, Adrian Niyonshuti is considered as the face of the country's cycling. His story of how cycling helped him overcome the trauma of the genocide inspired many to take up the sport, and not just men. However, on the other side, equally as important is Jeanne D'Arc, who is the country's pioneer female rider, and she spoke to Celestine Caronet on her journey into the sport and her dream for the future.
Rwanda's annual cycling competition, the Tour du Rwanda, is an attraction across the country. Many here cheering the national team. In 2009, Jeanne D'Arc Jirubuntu was among such a crowd, but today she is setting the pace for female cyclists in the country.
Watching the Tour du Rwanda from the sidelines created a passion within me. I wanted to be just like these riders, but it wasn't until 2012 when I now started participating, and from there, everything picked up.
2015 has been a breakthrough year for Jeanne. She spent time at the World Cycling Center in South Africa and also earned a wildcard entry to the World Championships.
For me, the most outstanding thing in my career to date was competing at the World Championships, where I was the first Black African woman to participate. I am very proud to represent not just my country, but East Africa as well, because many countries in this region do not have top female riders.
The 20-year-old hails from Ramagana, home of Adrian Niyonshuti, a genocide survivor who became a professional cyclist and is now inspiring a generation of cyclists in the country. Cycling continues to grow at a tremendous pace here in Rwanda, but that is in the men's division. For the women, there is still a lot of work to be done in getting more women into the sport.
It's an African problem. We don't have any tour of women. So women just are participating in African championships that is organized once in a year. But we are going to make a massive talent detection this coming year, especially for women.
A lot has changed over time as far as women are concerned in Rwanda, especially since government is encouraging many of us to take up not just leadership positions, but also compete in sports. But while cycling is attracting female riders in areas like Ruangama, there are places in the north where women are yet to embrace the sport.
Jeanne dreams of competing professionally for a top team one day. But more importantly, she hopes to lead more women into taking up the sport. Celestine Caronet, CCTV in Kigali, Rwanda.
Well, finally, this week on our Match Point Top 5 segment, we look at the most successful teams in the history of Africa's oldest tournament, the CECAFA Senior Cup, which got underway today in Ethiopia. Kickstarting our list this week are Malawi. The three-time champions last won the cup in 1989, making it 3 after a double win in 1978 and 1979. The Flames' last appearance at the Senior Challenge Cup came in 2012, and they have so far featured in 21 editions of the tournament. They have also come in as runners-up and third 3 times apiece. Fourth on our list are Tanzania, who have made an appearance at 34 editions of the tournament to date. They featured at the last edition held in 2013 after last year's CECAFA Cup failed to take place. The East Africans have also finished as runners-up of the Cup 5 times and taken third place 3 times. To date, they have made the third most appearances in the event. Ethiopia have only made 18 appearances at the East and Central African event but have been crowned champions on 4 different occasions. This year's hosts first won the tournament in 1987 and waited 14 years before winning their second, which came in 2001. Further wins in 2004 and 2005 and having never finished in a runners-up position make them one of the more efficient teams in the tournament's history as they sit in third on our list. Second are Kenya's Harambee Stars. One of the oldest sides in the history of the tournament, have made 35 appearances in the Cup and won it 6 times in 1975, 1981, 1982, 1983, 2002 and 2013. They've also finished 7 times in the second best position and third 6 times. They hosted the last edition of the tournament in 2013 when they won their 6th title, winning 2-0 in the final against Sudan. And first on our list this week is Uganda. The team is chasing a record 14th CECAFA Senior Challenge Cup this time around and have won it 7 times, more than their East African rivals Kenya. Following CECAFA's establishment in 1973, the team won the inaugural edition of the tournament in its current format and went on to dominate the event since then. Runners-up on 5 occasions and third place 6 times to date, the Cranes are top of our list and the most accomplished side in CECAFA history. Well, unfortunately, that's it for this week's edition of Matchpoint. Remember, you can send your feedback to us. We'd love to hear from you. Matchpoint@cctv.com. That's our email address. You can also visit our Facebook page, CCTV Africa, and drop a comment there. You can also stay in touch with us on Twitter. The handle, as always, is CCTV News Africa. Thanks for watching. I'm Mahia Mutua. We leave you with the images of this week's Move of the Week. Of course, this week we said goodbye to one of the greatest rugby players of all time, Jonah Lomu. So for our Move of the Week, we'll be turning the clock back all the way to 1995 when he stormed onto the scene at the Rugby World Cup.
Pass out to Lomu. Underwood can't take. This is the big man, Lomu. He's still on his feet. Lomu could score. That's a great try for New Zealand.
Watch that pass. It's not a very good pass, and well picked up by Lomu. Look at the power of the man. 118 kilograms, 6'5".
Quick pick up at the back by Richards, and then Morris going on the inside. But the ball's been taken away now. Here's another chance for Lomu. Can Lomu get past Michael Catt? The statistics say he's going to score his 4th try in almost the easiest of fashion. It was Lomu, Kronfeld, Lomu, Bishop and Lomu again. What a great day for the youngster.
This is how it started. England in possession. Dewi Morris with it. Intercept by Bishop.